Diddy acquitted of sex trafficking and racketeering. I'm Carlos Greer, senior reporter of Page Six, and I've got questions. Lisa Bonner, entertainment lawyer, former litigator, and legal correspondent. What's your reaction to this verdict?
Carlos, you and I have been talking for the last 7 weeks. We have been talking regularly. We have been going through the charges. And to say that I am flabbergasted would be an understatement. But again, I understand how the verdicts work in terms of the legalities of it. The RICO charge and the sex trafficking charges are a high bar for lay people to understand, but the jury has spoken and we accept what they have said, and now we move forward. But it is important to note that Sean Combs's legal trials and legal issues are far from over.
Okay. So, he's not facing life in prison because he's not facing life in prison. How much time is he now facing? What was he guilty of?
Sean Combs was found guilty of transportation for the purposes of prostitution, and that carries a maximum of 10 years. And you look at the sentencing guidelines, that is a maximum, but the judges have wide latitude and wide discretion on implementing the sentence. So what the judge will be looking for is the priors, the fact that Sean Combs has no priors. He was not convicted of any type of act that is a violent act. So he was convicted on the least serious of all the offenses. So in terms of sentencing, I would estimate somewhere between 18 and 24 months maximum. But we don't know. It is up to the judge. Sean could actually go home this afternoon. The judge has asked the prosecution and the defense to send in their letters in support of allowing Sean to go home and while he awaits sentencing, or serve the time in MDC while he awaits sentencing. I do believe, considering the verdict and considering all that we have seen, that Sean will most likely serve this time at home.
Wow. So, obviously this is a huge win for Diddy. It's a big victory for his defense team and for him, just judging by his reaction and his family's reaction.
It is. Sean was looking at life, up to life in prison. And if he were convicted on the sex trafficking acts as an individual, those carried a period of 15 years. So to look at what he could have gotten and to what he could get in terms of the 18 to 24 months, again, that is my estimation. We don't know, but that is a huge win for Sean Combs. Again, this is something that has stunned a lot of us in the legal profession. And some people really did see this was a high bar, but from a legal perspective, understanding the RICO charge and how difficult it is for jurors to understand, ordinary persons, lay people to understand, it's not surprising, but the jury has spoken. And like I said, we must accept that.
Why didn't the RICO charge stick, do you think?
The RICO charge was very difficult to understand because you have a issue of it's multifaceted and multi-layered, if you will. Firstly, to convict someone of RICO, you have to find that they used the criminal enterprise, this business of him, and used persons and commercial resources from the criminal enterprise in furtherance of the sex trafficking crimes. So you have to find that Sean sex trafficked these people first, the alleged victims first, and then you have to find that he was guilty by force, fraud, or coercion, and then you go down the rabbit hole of predicate acts. And predicate acts are what we've been talking about over these past several weeks: arson, kidnapping, obstruction of justice, forced labor. There was 8 of those. And so it's a very complicated, divergent issue, a set of facts that is difficult to process in terms of what the jury would be asked to implement, and ask them to really deconstruct 50 pages of jury instructions during that time. So it is very difficult to understand. And we've talked about this over time and time again. I saw it, what I thought too, that the jurors were chiming in on, but apparently the jurors did not come and find that this was a bar that could have been met unanimously.
Lisa, Diddy's reputation obviously is forever changed, his life and reputation. He's facing a gazillion civil lawsuits, and he's definitely not the flashy cars and yachts guy that we saw up until now. So I don't know if you can answer this, but how do you think this is going to affect his wealth and his place in pop culture?
Well, in terms of his wealth, he has 70 or so civil suits that need to be dealt with. So that is one. So in terms of his wealth, he's going to be paying lawyers to defend those. In terms of pop culture, I understand that they are looking already to have a party for him and his release. And it's important to understand that he had a large contingent of people that were behind him and were in support of him. And Americans, we are very forgiving, especially in the Black community. We are very forgiving. And in terms of that, it's still a divide, and there are still people that do believe that he was guilty of these charges. But again, the only thing that matters is what the jury has stated.
Does the verdict, does it affect the civil suits, do you think?
In a way it does, because the civil suits are a lower burden of proof. Where you have beyond a reasonable doubt in the criminal trial, you have a lower threshold, which is beyond the preponderance of the evidence. And so you can use the fact that he was not found guilty at such a high level in terms of the charges. So that is de facto evidence. But again, it is very difficult, and it depends on certain rules of evidence, but it could be used in terms of the civil case.
Lisa, it's always great to see you, and thank you for joining me every week to recap the Sean Diddy Combs trial. To rewatch our analysis, visit page6.com and watch us on YouTube.